Bundle up and grab the umbrella. Might want to grab the ice scraper too. A messy mix of rain, sleet, and even some freezing rain moving through the region today, making travel tricky in spots. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on 13 News Now at noon. I'm Ashley Smith.
And I'm Eugene Daniel. A mess indeed, but we have team coverage this afternoon tracking the aftermath of this winter storm. And once we get through today's winter weather, conditions dry out on Monday. Talking more about that, here's meteorologist Craig Willer. Craig, you guys have been working so hard the last week or so tracking this storm.
You know, keeping an eye on this thing, trying to pin this thing down. Early in the week looked like a lot of snow. Then it was like, nope, potential there for ice. And then it was looking like, well, it's warmer, snow totals down, chances for mixed precip up. That's pretty much what's played out, but I actually have some good news to share with you. If you're just now tuning in, you missed our coverage earlier this morning. Right now, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth and Norfolk not under winter storm warning. Neither is Northampton up on the eastern shore. Eastern North Carolina also no longer under winter storm warnings. Areas out to the west, though, Suffolk, Isle of Wight, the Franklin area out through Southampton, the Peninsula, Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck, all continue to be under the winter storm warning. And we still have winter weather advisories for Chowan back out through Bertie and areas off to the south of that. Now, as we take a look at what's happening out there right now, we do still have, again, much of the country under the winter storm warning. The heaviest of the snow is farther to the north. We've actually been seeing a changeover to rain. It started early this morning, and that was anticipated near the coast and then overtaking the region. So all of that in the forecast has worked out perfectly. Snow totals have been on the lighter side, and that makes for easy travel. I know that might be a little bit of a disappointment to some of the kids that wanted to wake up and have more snow. We did have snow overnight, but that rain really knocked it down and kind of made it a slushy mess. We still have some mixed precipitation inland, mainly just some rain, sleet kind of mixing in. The concern for freezing rain also not as great as it was looking coming into it, although there are still some areas we need to watch. You take a look at Franklin right now, 31 degrees there. It is dry in Franklin. Wakefield at 27 as we check in. Some snow reported from Wakefield. Ahoskie at 29. This is one of those areas where the air temperature is sub-freezing and you've got a report of rain, so maybe a little freezing rain out that way. Around Newport News now, 32 and cloudy, and we've seen the precip kind of winding down up around Melfa as well. It's been rain at the coast. It's wet at Norfolk Botanical Garden as we check in with the Thompson Creek Window Company Skyview. There's a look at the next 9 hours. A little bit of a break with the precip coming up into the afternoon, but more rain chances later this evening and some mix inland. Marta?
All right, as we take a look at the roads this afternoon, big improvement across the region from earlier this morning and in the overnight hours. You likely will not see much snow left on the roads unless you're up on the peninsula near Williamsburg, maybe on the eastern shore. But for the majority of Hampton Roads, that melting has occurred. I took a drive over our break here, and it was mostly just standing water. That's honestly your biggest concern at this point. I-264 west near Witch Duck Road, we were watching a crash there a moment ago. It has cleared out, but you can see on the roads, it's that water getting kicked up now. We're not seeing the snow that we did earlier on. So if you're used to driving in rain, this is much preferred. Around the region, this is up in Hampton this morning. Again, Mercury Boulevard. You can see there's snow off on the shoulder. There's snow on the grass, but not on the road itself. Other than that, the Berkeley Bridge is just soggy. So if you are headed out the door wondering if it's going to be slick or slippery, not right now. I would plan more for that water, that standing water, and that rain if you're worried about impacts to your commute. Guys.
Okay, Marta, thank you for that. You know, this winter storm continuing to have an impact on the Commonwealth with dangerous travel conditions across Virginia. State police are urging drivers to stay off the roads through Monday morning and give VDOT crews and first responders their room to work. As of late Sunday morning, troopers have responded to 240 crashes statewide, including 16 with injuries. 47 of those crashes were in Hampton Roads. One fatal crash happened in Fairfax County, and it remains under investigation and is not believed to be related to the weather.
Well, we're continuing this weather coverage of today's aftermath of last night's winter storm. So now we're tracking the rain, the ice, and the sleet.
And Jordy Clark has been out and about all morning long in our weather impact interceptor. And Jordy, where are you and what are conditions like where you are?
Good morning or good afternoon. That just shows how long I've been out. So yes, we have been out all day, kind of hitting a lot of the areas on the south side of Virginia, and we certainly have seen such a mixed bag. Now, I think we have seen through all of our team coverage as well, just how different it looks depending on where you are. Now, we are currently in Norfolk on Hampton Boulevard headed north, and what's crazy to think is just this morning coming into work, it was snow covering the ground, the side roads as well, the neighborhoods, and it was a winter wonderland. And now we are seeing just pure rain. A lot of that snow has since washed away. And so that's, I think, what a lot of areas, especially on the south side, are seeing. Now, of course, our friends that are up north might still be seeing a lot of that snow, but as you can see, the roads are certainly wet. And so we are definitely accustomed to dealing with a lot of those wet conditions. I wouldn't necessarily get into the flooding aspect, of course, but again, we have all that precipitation that is now, melting. But again, because of the cold temperatures, that's what crews are certainly, advising to be careful of, because the overnight temperatures are something to be concerned about, because you see all this water, what that looks like in the morning could be obviously a bit of concern. So certainly something we will track throughout this afternoon as well, and even our evening crews as they kind of look at how the, transition from all that snow and now it's transitioning into the rain. So it is a little bit sad to have to say good morning to it and goodbye to it within the span of, 12 hours. So certainly, again, just to see how different this storm looked for different areas in Virginia. But we'll keep our eye on the roads until then. But for now, live in Norfolk, Jordy Clark, 13 News Now.
All right, Jordy, thank you for that. Yeah, good point. Definitely very different from when we first got on the air earlier this morning. But you mentioned we're focusing on the water at this point. The rain, the snow, the sleet. It's certainly impacting much of the country in different ways. Some areas hit harder than others.
And one of those has been Williamsburg. All morning long, we were going to Brianna Fallon. We're going to go to her now live. And it seemed like she really had the snow there throughout all of daybreak. And what's it looking like now? It looks like it finally stopped falling there for you, Brianna.
Yeah, it started with the snow, then we kind of moved to the sleet, and now we're just kind of seeing some rain, very minimal. But, like we mentioned earlier, there were crews out kind of cleaning the roads, clearing the sidewalks. Right now, you can take a look at the road right here. We're near William and Mary right now, and the road is just kind of filled with slush. We're still seeing some salt trucks go by the road here to kind of loosen that up. But if you actually want to take a look right here, since this morning, it's gotten much harder. Now, this is kind of like slush, and some areas it's harder. It's going to be a little more difficult to clean up here. And even over here on our way to come out here to talk to you guys, I almost slipped because this is just ice. So some things are already starting to kind of freeze over, which could be a little dangerous. So if you're going to be, walking around Colonial Williamsburg, just make sure to take your time this morning. But I did talk to a crew earlier today who mentioned that they are going full throttle and just trying to clear the roads to keep everyone safe.
We're trying to get all of this section clear of snow and ice. We got blowers, we got snow blowers.
We're just trying to get it clear so everybody can walk safely without falling out here today.
And they mentioned earlier today that earlier it was pretty easy to get some of that snow between salts and shovels off the sidewalk. But throughout the day, they weren't too sure what the conditions were going to look like, and if it was going to still be as easy to remove snow and slush from the sidewalk. Like I mentioned, things are already starting to kind of freeze over here, so it might be a little bit more difficult. So again, just be careful, and definitely be careful if you're going to be out on the roads today. Live in Williamsburg, Brianna Fallon, 13 News Now.
Brianna, this is Craig Moeller here. Quick question for you. You brought up a great point that it's actually getting crunchier and maybe a bit icier right now. Earlier, we had some warmer air mixing in, and it looks like some of the treatments were effective. Behind you, we can see where they look like they cleared some of that. Is that now iced over, or are you just looking at a crunchy layer on top of what was already out there? Tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, so, I mean, back down there, it's more so slush, kind of over here where I'm at right now, where it wasn't as cleared, I guess, is the best way to put it. It is really crunchy and a little bit slushy, as I was mentioning. But again, with that slush, some of it has already kind of started to freeze over, and it's a little slippery out here.
Okay, Craig, and I'm glad you saw that. That's something that, really kind of caught your attention.
That's great information, Brianna. We really appreciate your reports from up there. I know she continues to gather more information, but this is one of the areas that we're really going to be worried about with the refreeze, because the temperatures there really aren't warming up. We'll get into that coming up in the full forecast, but thank you for that report, because what she's telling us about it getting crunchier now, and I know there's some soft spots, but where it's getting crunchier, those are the areas that we really need to watch for the harder refreeze.
And another place that we're, watching and tracking is where we have Derek Lytle. He's in Wakefield, and, Derek as well. We saw a lot of kind of snow, a little bit more than some of the other areas that we were seeing in his shots. So, Derek, that snow still there on the ground? Are you kind of experiencing a similar condition there with the snow out there?
Yeah, you bet. This is the first time you guys have come to us where the sleet's no longer, an issue coming down. However, I'm standing on a block of ice as we speak. This entire gas station lot is all iced over. You can see it even on the pumps here. The main road across, VDOT's done a good job taking care of that, and a lot of traffic actually as we've been here, but a lot of the lots here in town are all iced over. And I can tell you, I don't know if it's just all the snow gear being wet, or it just feels like it's colder now. So that's definitely impacting none of this going away. I talked to a couple locals that live here in Wakefield. They say they got all their gear together and started making their sales pitch to residents to start clearing lots. I'll let you take a listen into what he had to say earlier.
We know everybody around here. They come up and ask us, hey, can you plow some snow for us? And we're like, yeah, sure. We don't charge an arm and a leg.
Not charging an arm and a leg today seems like a pretty good sales pitch to me, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, Derek. Thank you so much for your reporting. And it's been interesting to even watch, your reporting change throughout the morning as well. I think both you and Brianna had such significant snowfall in the areas where you were. So now to see really that packed down look there and a little bit more ice and slush than that snow that we saw earlier is really interesting to see. So let's check in now with Jeremiah Beatty, because she's in Smithfield. And I know, Jeremiah, your transition kind of over to that slush and a little bit of more ice was a little bit earlier, I think, than it was in Wakefield.
Exactly right, Ashley. That's still pretty consistent at this point this morning. You see some water droplets there on the lens, and the rain has been continuous. That has been consistent all morning long. I've also spotted a lot of frozen ice. So this tree here, I want to kind of highlight that. There's several branches that are on the ground. That's because they've been falling. So at one point, we had our vehicle parked right there and had to move back because those branches were falling down. But if you take a wide shot of this area, you can just see this parking lot is still frozen, solid. You can see some tire tracks there. It's still ice. So in some areas where you step, you're stepping in solid ice. In other areas, it's sloshy like you see there. So that seems to be the theme out here in Smithfield, but some of those major roads are still passable, which you see this car driving by there fine. So I did have an opportunity to catch up with some children that were playing out in this, actually. Take a listen to what they said.
Really excited because we usually don't get snow around here.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they told me tomorrow they will be out of school, but they actually were picking up this frozen ice on the ground, just kind of enjoying the elements. At least some people out here are enjoying that. But again, it's just kind of wet and messy this morning, but we definitely have been watching those tree limbs that have been falling. So if you're, just be careful outside if you step outside this afternoon. But reporting live from Smithfield, I'm Jeremiah Beatty.
And Jeremiah, I know Craig and I both were looking at this too. If we can get another shot at those tree limbs as well.
If Chris can turn that camera. It's interesting to note this morning when we came in, the mixing ratio, or the liquid to snow ratio, was like 1 to 15. It was a light, fluffy snow. What we've been seeing more frequently now with the sleet and the rain mixing in, you're seeing ice coating those trees. And look at this. Okay, let's come back down just a little bit, Chris. That's perfect right there. You're looking at limbs that are hanging down. Those are some guy wires there that are holding up that post. But if we go back up, where you have above ground utilities, let's pan back up towards the trees here and you get up towards the power lines, you see those branches are now sagging down. And it looks to me, and Jeremiah, you can back us up or let us know otherwise, it looks like those power lines may have some coating on them as well as you look up there, Jeremiah. Are we seeing that correctly?
Yes, Craig. We definitely are seeing what icicles hanging off from the power lines. And now that you mention it, seeing those tree limbs, I know the restaurant here, we're right outside Main Street's diner, and they were kind of just watching that as well, just making sure that wouldn't affect the power in this area. But, you know, that's something a lot of people will be keeping an eye on because there's a lot of trees in the Smithfield, Isle of Wight area.
And Jeremiah, do me a favor when you guys do your hit. Don't stand directly underneath those power lines with those trees that have been impacted. And the reason why I say that, too, I just checked on the Dominion Energy outage map, and they have about 200 customers who are out in your area right now because a tree is on a line. So, of course, they're going to be working through that across the region. We got about 2,500 people right now who are experiencing, or customers who are experiencing power outages. But literally right now, they're looking at an area in Smithfield where people don't have power because a tree has fallen on one of those lines out there. So when you're doing any live hits, you're doing a great job, you and Chris. Just make sure you also are out of that line, of those lines, okay?
Yeah.
So it's good that we were able to see that for ourselves.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Jeremiah, you know, Craig, I think you put it in such great perspective because earlier this morning we talked to Dominion and they mentioned how impactful the ice is when it comes to outages. So to be able to really see that in person, I think it was great to put it in perspective.
You saw the lines there, and again, so appreciate all of our live crews. They've been out since 3 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
Working hard.
In the area. So they've had a super long day. But what Jeremiah was just able to show us, it only takes a half an inch of ice. Doesn't seem like much, right? But if you have that amount of ice on power lines, the weight of that on those lines, 500 pounds. Think about that.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then you've got those branches that are now being weighted down, and as soon as they start to make contact with the lines, that's where we get into trouble. So, again, it's one of those things. At times earlier this week, the models were going much more aggressive on the ice totals. Thank goodness we didn't reach the peak of those, but we're not out of the woods yet for those inland areas. If there's still some light precip there, you could have some additional ice building up, and those are the areas that we're concerned with, and that's why we continue our weather impact alert.
And listen, that's why we're here on this Sunday, right? Whenever we have a storm, you can count on us here at 13 News Now. We're going to keep you updated with what's happening, what's changing, and obviously how that's going to impact your family as well. We got so much more on the back end of this right after the break.
Oh, that's not right.
So I'm just going to, I'm going to burn through some of the snow totals. All right, we're going to take a look at some of the snow totals. Folks have asked me over and over, okay, who got what? Did we really see snow? And honestly, we had some really beautiful snow blanketing the ground coming in this morning very, very early before the rain mixed in and started to wash it away. It was a beautiful winter scene across much of the area and not a tremendous amount of snow. Tim was calling for up to 2 inches across the south side, generally 1 to 2. And for the most part, that's what we saw. We'll take a look at a few locations with these storm reports. Sigma there, city of Virginia Beach, south down towards Punga, only about a ½ an inch there. Got an inch in Western Branch, that was reported this morning, and we had an inch around Kempsville. So, you know, these numbers within reason. Out at Ben's Church, we had 2 inches, so a little more snow out there. And I wanted to mention the ice report from Norfolk International. We did have freezing rain earlier, and the ASOS station there at Norfolk International reported a light glazing, just 0.04 of an inch. Not enough to really create major problems, but we did have some icing there. Now, I want to show you who's been seeing a lot more snow, because that heavier snow that was supposed to impact like the Richmond area is actually a little farther north. So as we take a look at some of the totals, up in Herndon in Fairfax County, 6 inches of snow there reported, 6.5 in Augusta County. As we take a look back into Calvert, 4.5 inches. So there were some pretty decent amounts of snow. Ashland there just north of Richmond and Hanover, 4.5 inches. Some pretty significant snows central and northern Virginia. And obviously you see the radar. It's still snowing up that way. I'll have more on our local forecast, what you can expect coming up.
All right, Craig, thanks for that. Now to the travel picture in the skies as a storm leads to a massive shutdown of air travel across the country.
ABC's Rena Roy is at Newark International with the latest.
More than 9,000 flights across the U.S. canceled as the winter storm wreaks havoc in multiple states. Today expected to be one of the worst days in U.S. aviation history for weather-related flight cancellations, leaving travelers scrambling.
So I don't know what they're going to do because it's going to be shut down. You know, they probably missed a trip.
Some of the nation's busiest hubs hit the hardest, including Charlotte Douglas International, Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson, and New York's LaGuardia Airport. Airlines say they're doing what they can by bulking up staffing, repositioning aircraft, and adjusting crew schedules. Some major airports even spending more than $30,000 an hour to keep runways plowed.
The Department of Aviation has about 40 pieces of equipment that are used to clear the runways, the roadways, the sidewalks.
American and Delta allowing passengers to change their flights at no extra cost, and United issuing travel waivers for impacted cities.
We had to leave our vacation a day and a half early, so that's kind of frustrating. We're hoping getting out early gets us in, but you just never know.
And of course, if you don't have to go anywhere, the best thing to do is just stay home and avoid this mess. At Newark Airport in New Jersey, Rena Roy, ABC News.
And we're seeing a similar picture here in Norfolk. Taking a look at Norfolk International Airport, most of the flights coming out and into the city have either been canceled or delayed. Most of these red dots that you're seeing there are actually cancellations. Now, that's not necessarily because of the conditions here, but airport officials say that they are seeing more issues in other places, and that is what is causing a lot of these flights to be canceled. They say that their crews at ORF have actually cleared the runways, and they've kept facilities open. That doesn't mean that that bad weather isn't negatively impacting where you could be going or coming from. Now, for instance, Reagan National, all of the flights there have been canceled. We're also seeing most cancellations in the D.C. area between the Baltimore airport and then also there with Dulles. So, as always, if you are scheduled to fly out from ORF or any airport, you want to check in with your airline to make sure that you are up to date whenever that flight is going to actually be rescheduled or if it will be taking off today. Ashley.
All right, Eugene, thank you for that. Well, coming up, hundreds of thousands across the country without power. How crews are working to turn it back on. Plus, parts of the South blanketed with snow. We take you inside one SEC stadium. This weekend's winter storm has power outages surging across the country.
PowerOutage.com reported more than 800,000 outages as of this morning. Tennessee, the hardest hit state so far with over 300,000 outages. That was followed by Texas with over 135,000, Mississippi with over 135,000. My aunt right now just texted us. She's one of those people without power this morning. And Louisiana with over 120,000. Now, many of the outages in southern states are caused by ice weighing down on tree branches. We were just talking about that out of Smithfield, and that can cause them to snap. And Dominion Energy crews are right now working to assist people who are without power. There are well over, you can see there across the region and in Virginia, 2,200 total customers without power at this time throughout the region. We're going to continue to monitor conditions throughout the day and try to get some more updates on how things are going with those outages in our area.
Well, meanwhile, several parts of the South, including Georgia, also waking up to whiteout conditions.
Joe Ripley from our sister station in Atlanta has a closer look at conditions inside University of Georgia Stadium.
The old saying goes before every Georgia home game, it's time to tee it up between the hedges. Well, if you look behind me, it's time to freeze it up between the hedges. Take a look at Sanford Stadium here, Dooley Field, completely coated in a layer of ice. You can still see some of the Power G at midfield and some of the lettering in the end zones, even Uga's doghouse off in the distance. But this is a look at what the University of Georgia here in Athens, Georgia looks like. We've had winter weather falling all day and all sorts of precipitation from sleet to freezing rain, even some snow flurries flying around. And right now we're in a bit of a lull, but forecasters expect more precipitation to come our way throughout the day Sunday, with the risk of it freezing as well overnight as temperatures plummet. The weather expected to get much colder between tonight and tomorrow. That will make conditions on the roads dangerous. Power crews, government officials here locally are warning drivers to stay off the roads, stay hunkered down with only the essentials that you need. Make sure you have extra food, plenty of water, a power bank in reserve so that you're able to get any alerts you might need for your area, as well as any medications. I'm Joe Ripley reporting for the Weather Channel.
You know, I'll say this, as an LSU faithful fan, I have some good and bad memories in that stadium. But, you know, certainly it is interesting to see in Georgia at that level of snow kind of take over the field.
Yeah, it's exciting for those folks that don't get a chance to see it, honestly, but it's also very dangerous, or can be if folks venture out. So I like the fact you were saying from your family, they're just kind of hunkering down and they're going to ride it out.
Yeah, my aunt, who's in Mississippi right now, she just sent us all a group text saying that they had lost power and they were going to be shutting down their phones to kind of save it. But she was mentioning about the trees that were falling in their community, and I think that's how they lost power. We saw that also a little bit for some people impacted in Smithfield, where Jeremiah is. So that's always going to be, we were talking to Dominion Energy, a concern when you have this kind of storm.
Absolutely. And with more of that warmer mid-layer coming in, and you know, we talk about this, remember, cold at the surface, and then you get a lot of warmth in the middle. That's where you get freezing rain. If there's enough cold air for it to refreeze before it hits, then you get ice pellets or sleet. Yeah. But we've had this warm air intrusion, and the bottom line is, instead of being light, fluffy, powdery snow like it was when it started, it's now getting wetter and heavier. So it is starting to weigh down things like tree limbs and power lines. And we're going to continue to watch it. It is going to be a story. As we take a look here, our weather impact alert continues. I want to take you up to Williamsburg with a live look up there. And this is courtesy of colonialwilliamsburg.org. We appreciate this live camera that they are sharing with us. Doesn't look like too many folks are out on the streets right now. They're watching. It looks like they've actually done some work and cleared it. Air temperature up in Williamsburg right now is 32 degrees, so they're right on the cusp. But as we heard from Brianna earlier, our reporter up there, she was saying that, you know, some of the areas, it's getting kind of crunchier, and that it's not just slushy, soft, melty, but rather almost like starting to refreeze a little bit some of the surfaces. So I really do want to encourage you to use extra caution as you are going about your business today. And if you don't have to venture out, stay inside. We're glad you're watching us here at as we continue to stream. We'll have additional special coverage later as we go through the afternoon and into the evening as well. And we've been doing updates at the top and bottom of each hour. We're going to resume those after the show. You know, each half hour you can get a little update. Now, I do expect a break for Hampton Roads around the south side, but there's going to be more chances for wet weather into the evening and maybe some mixed precipitation. You contrast what I just showed you up at Colonial Williamsburg with what's happening right now at Norfolk Botanical Garden. I think about how gorgeous the garden is here in Norfolk and what a treat that is to go out there and enjoy their beautiful grounds. Not really today, though. You can see a cold rain right now at Norfolk Botanical Garden. 38 degrees, rain at the airport. Winds are north-northwest, actually, at 8 miles per hour. Now, these inland areas still well below freezing. Precip has been very, very light out there, but where we do have any liquid or mixed precip falling into these surfaces, you do have the potential for additional ice. I'll show you projections going forward. And very quickly, actually, I want to take you back to the radar just quickly to show you things starting to break up now down to the south. Very light precip, just about done. Heavier stuff still working up through the eastern shore. And we still have these areas of sleet and rain mixed here, and then still the potential for some freezing rain, as I mentioned, out along I-95, areas west of that freezing rain, and then eventually snow as you continue 64 between Richmond and Charlottesville. Now, take a look at what's happening here. Here's our surface low. At one point, the models had this low pressure, and you just see the wind circulating here. They had this low way out here. Guess what? That brought the colder air, kept it here, and we had the potential for a lot more snow. Well, the models throughout the week kept trending it back closer to us, and with that low camped right here, that's really pulling in more warm air, which is why we saw the transition. And now that that low's starting to pull away, we're actually going to dry out a little bit, and eventually some of this kind of backside, or what we call wraparound moisture, will come into play late afternoon and into the evening. So I think a little more precip will be possible. You see that break, and then there's the wraparound moisture coming back in. Chances for some mix inland, so we're not out of the woods yet. This is at 6:30. Maybe some rain showers here in Hampton Roads because it's still a little bit too warm. That moves out late tonight. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be in much better shape. However, this is a big however. We take a look out some of those western areas. We're going to be watching for potential refreeze and ice on those roads out west. That's why we're starting early tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. Our whole team will be here watching and letting you know exactly what you're waking up to tomorrow. Maybe a couple flurries later in the day. Not a big deal there. It is going to be colder and stay colder for a while. Notice the snow, additional snow with the graph model, not really producing much here over the next hour or two. That actually stops at noon here. I'm not sure why that held up. So I'm going to have to take a look and run that out a little bit. That would show why it wasn't going to add much. But really light amounts of snow. That stuff's winding down. As far as the ice potential goes, through the afternoon and evening, there's still a potential for maybe a tenth to a couple tenths of an inch, especially towards Richmond and up around Tappahannock. Most of our area in better shape as far as freezing rain or anything like that. We've got rain now. Temperatures again low to mid 40s. We have cooler conditions inland. You see the spread of temperatures. Down to the south, it gets much warmer. You can see the temperatures later today in the low 50s at the Outer Banks and low 30s out towards Ahoskie. What a spread of temperatures. All right, you look ahead. Temperatures get colder over the coming week. Highs Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in the low 30s. We might, and I'll say might, see a few snow showers on Thursday.
All right, well, this is the window of time where if you did need to head out on the roads, you will not see major impacts like we saw this morning. And with precipitation expected later tonight, this is a good time to go out on the roads if you have to. Of course, better not to, but they are wet, like from rain, not so much from snow and ice right now. So that's good news. Traffic flows around the region improving across the south side and peninsula. Don't have those slower traffic speeds that we saw earlier this morning. So that is good news. Taking a live look in Virginia Beach. And once again, the issue now on the roads is going to be standing water in general. Just be aware of that. It's not so much that snow anymore or the ice. just be aware you may see some puddling and that kind of thing this morning. Other than that, or this afternoon, I should say. Other than that, around the region up on the peninsula, when we checked in on this camera on US 17 up on Gloucester Point earlier this morning, it was completely snow covered. A lot of that melting has occurred, so good news there. Otherwise, around the region up in Hampton at Big Bethel Road, similar situation. So your turn lanes, your shoulders, there still may be some snow, but for the most part, as you are headed out the door, we've certainly seen some improvement. Just watch for that wetness and moisture on the surfaces, guys.
Okay, Marta, thank you for that. Now let's take a live look from our weather impact interceptor driving through Norfolk.
Looks like a completely different place.
Yeah, they're live this morning, and they've been live since early this morning. Did not look like that at 4 o'clock this morning, we'll tell you that for sure. All right, our team coverage continues right after the break. Make sure to stick with us. Thanks for sticking with us here on 13 News Now. I'm Ashley Smith.
And I'm Eugene Daniel. You know, it's one of those days where Mother Nature just can't make up her mind. We've had rain, we've had sleet, even some freezing rain as people are sliding through the area, bringing those slick roads and cold wind chills.
Yeah, we've been tracking this wintry mix across the region all morning long into the afternoon. Let's head back out to Brianna Fallon. She's been in Williamsburg all morning and certainly now. So what are you seeing at this point? How have things changed since you first got into Williamsburg?
Yeah, you know, earlier this morning we saw snow, then we saw sleet, and now we're seeing pretty much rain. The roads over here still have a good layer of slush on them, so, you know, if you are out on the roads, just drive very carefully. That could get slippery. Another thing to really mention here is if you actually look at my feet, so you can kind of see this is all slush at this point. But if you come and you walk over here, one of the concerns we were talking about earlier is the potential for refreezing just with the temperatures out here. So right here, this is just a thin layer of ice. So it's very slippery. We saw somebody on the other side of the street almost slip a little bit ago. I almost slipped kind of walking over here. So if you are going to be out and about, just make sure to be very careful when you're walking, especially if there is something that looks like snow or slush still on the sidewalk. We've actually seen a couple businesses down this strip that closed early. Some don't seem to be open at all. But again, if you are going to be out on the roads, just really take your time, especially if you are around Colonial Williamsburg, and as well as if you're going to take any walks on the sidewalks here, just be cautious and take your time. Live in Williamsburg, Brianna Fallon, 13 News Now.
Yeah, that refreezing certainly something we're going to be watching throughout the day and into the night. And of course, we've been mentioning we're going to start daybreak early tomorrow just to make sure everybody is safe out there.
Yeah, we certainly will, and we'll see you there in the morning for sure. But right now, let's turn things over to Derek, who is in Wakefield. Derek, how are things looking?
Hey, you know, since you came to me last, I popped over to the market across the street, grabbed some snacks, and not gonna lie, that ice almost tore an ACL. So you would have been coming to wheelchair, Derek. Thankfully, I did a little bit of a shuffle, got good with it. But no, we've seen people having a good time out here. There was a car just pulling their child behind him with a sled. People are making the most out of today. An interesting thing, when you do step on this ice throughout some of these parking lots, you'll start to see water start to compress and squeeze out of it. So that's kind of letting me know that things are finally starting to melt here. We haven't had much of a melt off, you know, since you guys have been coming to us around the 6 o'clock this morning hour. So that's some good news, some positive steps forward. Talked to some guys making some money shoveling and helping out clear some driveways. I'll let you listen in on what they had to say about the winter temps and snowfall today.
I love it when it comes around. We go out and have some fun in the snow. But also at the same time, it's cold. I like sometimes better.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a lot different than my coverage in flip-flops down in the Outer Banks during hurricane season, guys. It's a little different.
Yeah. We're glad that you were properly dressed for today because you certainly would have taken a tumble if you would have dressed anywhere similar to what you did in the Outer Banks.
Yeah, we don't want you to do that.
There you go.
Not in the slightest. Yeah, you're definitely dressed for these really just freezing temps at this point. And that's why we're still seeing that white coating there in Wakefield. Now, the question is, how's it look in Smithfield? Let's head to Jemiah Beatty to see how things have shaped up there. Jemiah, are you still seeing a pretty decent coating on the ground?
Hey, good afternoon, Ashley. Yes, if you take a look down at my feet, we're still seeing ice. That is what's been out here and pretty crunchy. The rain is still coming down, but I do want to turn your attention right over there to the power lines and trees because we've seen this ice and snow and rain. That's weighing some of those tree limbs down. We've seen several break down and laying on the ground, and that's been a big concern. I know causing some power outages for folks across our region, but you can just see like this area is still covered with snow. You're still seeing the ice on the ground, very crunchy out here for sure. And that's been consistent out here all in Smithfield. And, you know, driving earlier this morning when all of this stuff was kicking off, we had to take our time on the roadway because you had that frozen ice. It was very slushy. For us, we just had to really brace ourselves and be patient, use be cautious on the roadways as we were driving this morning. But again, you can see the rain is still coming down, not as hard as it was earlier, but the conditions out here have been consistent, still snowy, icy, and a lot of rain. So we'll continue to keep an eye on conditions out here for you in Smithfield, but I'm going to toss it back to you all in the studio.
Hey, Jemiah, answer this for me because you guys have been out there for a minute in that location too. Have you seen any of those limbs fall while you've been out there, or you kind of stumbled and found them when you drove there?
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. So we're kind of parked outside of this diner here, and we were parked, show them, Chris, over here. I don't want to walk on the ground because it's rock solid, but we were parked closer to that light pole there, and several tree limbs started falling down in front of the vehicle to the point I had to move our car out of the way just in case a bigger tree limb fell. But my colleague here, Chris Leary, told me inside, he was sitting inside this diner behind me, and he said the power went out for about 10 seconds, and then your one and only Jemiah Beatty walked in, and the power went on, but we were seeing some impacts from those tree limbs falling. So I just had to throw that in, guys.
Okay,
but
Jemiah.
yeah, we did see several of them fall while we've been out here.
Why need a backup generator when you have the presence of Jemiah Beatty?
Oh, we love our Jemiah, my goodness. But thank you for that. I mean, we've been talking a lot about how that ice has really impacted the limbs and, of course, the power lines. So we're glad y'all are safe.
Yes, that's the big thing.
And that the power is back on, Jemiah.
All jokes aside, we're glad that you guys are safe.
Thank you so much. All right, so Jemiah mentioned, you know, it's still kind of raining a little bit there out in Smithfield. But, you know, the snow and the sleet is still falling in Washington, D.C. The worst may be the cold that follows. So we're going to have a look from the National Mall. That's coming up next.
You know, the snow may be winding down, but the impacts are far from over in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, let's turn it out to Paul Goodloe from the Weather Channel. He has more on conditions at the National Mall.
Still seeing some snow, but mainly sleet now mixing in here in Washington, D.C. You can see we're here on the mall and the Capitol Rotunda about a mile down. We can't quite make it out there, but there's definitely some people out and about enjoying a snow day here in D.C. All the museums are closed today and tomorrow, as well as government and federal government offices here, city and federal government. Yeah, the snow, it is light and fluffy. Now we're seeing the sleet on top of it, and look at this. Because it's been so cold, yeah, this snow is light and fluffy. Problem with that is the wind takes it and blows it back over the streets. The streets have been plowed, pre-treated with salts and other brine solutions, but now the wind is blowing the snow. The good news about the sleet is it'll help pack the snow down, perhaps not blowing as much over, but we do expect all of this to start ending sometime later on this Sunday evening. And sunshine does return on Monday, but this is not going anywhere anytime soon. We're seeing our temperatures stay below freezing through next weekend. This could be the longest stretch of sub-freezing temperatures here in D.C. since perhaps the late 70s or maybe even 80s. So yeah, we're in the deep freeze, covered with maybe 4 to 8 inches of snow here in our nation's capital. I'm Paul Goodloe for the Weather Channel.
Okay, here's a live look from our Nauticus cam. Quite a bit of a different story there. And meteorologists Craig Muller and Marta Berglund will be back after the break. You'll get your forecast and those conditions on the roads. We have been tracking the impacts of this winter storm all morning long, and it's mainly just rain at this point that we're seeing here at Hampton Roads.
So let's turn now to Jordy Clark. She's been live in our Weather Impact Interceptor all morning, but it looks like she's out of the car now. So, Jordy, where are you right now? And we can see it's a lot greener than it was the last time we checked in on you.
Yes, unfortunately, we only got to experience the snow for a little bit, but we are currently in Norfolk near Monticello Avenue. And what I will say is just, again, being everywhere, I kind of got the luxury of going all the way to the ocean front and back inland and seeing how we started with some wonderful snowy roads. And then now it's almost like a usual rainy day here in Hampton Roads. But what I also wanted to point out, I'm going to use my last live hit of the day to kind of talk a little bit about the environmental impact. Now, Virginia is one of those unique places that doesn't always get the huge impacts of snow, but when they do, of course, putting salt on the roads is certainly something they have to do to keep people safe, but they have to work with so many environmental groups to balance how much salt they're using, because when you talk about all that melting that we just experienced, I wanted to show you guys just how much flooding happens when it comes to this area. I just mean in these big pools of water and all the salt that washes away in it, and that gets into the rivers, and that's why they have to be so strategic and specific about how much salt they are putting on the roads. So they have to balance safety, they have to balance the environmental impact. So they have got a lot going on. VDOT crews have been working all week long just to make sure that can happen, and certainly did a great job, because now we see that the roads have been pretty drivable for the most part. But of course, unfortunately, with those freezing temperatures, we will certainly see that kind of impact tomorrow morning with how that might affect the roads, getting that snow to rain. And certainly, I will say, me personally, I feel like I've been through every single element outside of warmth today. So I've certainly seen it all. But again, we see how much work went into kind of preparing for this weekend's winter storm, and as well as our meteorologists working hard to kind of, direct us all through that and guide us through what we need to know, especially for everyone at home. So again, today, luckily, is Sunday, so hopefully no one has anything to do and everyone got everything out of the way, because I know me, I want to go home and eat some soup after a day like this, starting with snow and then now in the rain, of course. But certainly still keeping our eyes on, and stay here with us at 13 News Now to get anything up to date with all the weather, latest and news as well. But until then, live in Norfolk, Jordy Clark, 13 News Now.
Yes, soup and smiles, Jordy. Soup, smiles.
Yes.
Oh, sleep. I forgot the other S in there.
There you
Sleep.
go.
But
There you
again,
go.
definitely to you, Jordy, and to all of our
Please.
crews, great kudos, because you have been everywhere this morning. She's been in Norfolk, she's been in Virginia Beach, she's been in Portsmouth, she's been in Chesapeake. So kudos to you, Jordy, for being a great trooper.
Yeah, very busy this morning. And shout out to all the crews that have been working hard to just
Long
keep us
day.
informed. Long day for everybody. I mean, really a long week and some change for you, Craig.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on. I can tell you so many elements of the storm worked out. Honestly, it underperformed a little bit in snow, but as somebody that wouldn't necessarily want to deal with having the entire area shut down, it's good that we came in on the lighter side. And we were calling for up to 2 inches. We got, as I showed earlier, about an inch or so across most of the south side, slightly higher amounts up of the peninsula, really only about an inch and a half to 2 inches up that way. But once you got up around the Richmond area north, that's where you're getting into 4.5, 5.5, 6, 7 inches and more. I want to show you a picture from back in St. Louis. My mom sent me this earlier. Just a reminder, as we showed you, UGA and the stadium down there, all the snow. Guys, that was taken early this morning. That's about 6 to 7 inches of snow, and they had another 3 or so on the way. So places back in the Midwest, this storm system is massive, and it is dumping a lot of snow. When you consider the heavy snow and the ice for other parts of the country, that's why Eugene was reporting on some travel issues out of Norfolk. Our local airport's been doing a great job dealing with the wintry conditions overnight, and then now just the rain. But other parts of the country, not nearly as fortunate. Now, I wanted to show the carousel because earlier we had this morning and it was snow covered. And then as the rain started to mix in, we started to see a little bit more of the green roofing there showing through. And it looked like the snow was starting to wash away. Now, look at how much of that snow is gone, what had fallen overnight. So again, it's warmer, 37 at the airport with rain, north-northwest winds at 8 miles per hour. And when you look at the north-northwest wind coming into Norfolk, that's significant. I'm going to show you the wind field in just a moment. Still, temperatures sub-freezing out along I-95. Places like Wakefield below freezing, 28 degrees, cloudy right now. Up in Williamsburg, 32 in Newport News, cloudy there. A lot of the precip we were tracking earlier is really winding down. Still a little bit of very light mix up there. And then you get northwest of Richmond, they're still seeing some snow. There's that north-northwest wind wrapping back around on the backside of the low pressure here. And this exact track was the key to the forecast. Early in the week, the models had this thing offshore, keeping us with much colder air and moisture just streaming in and really piling up as snow. As the models progressed through the week, it was apparent this thing was going to track closer to the coast and move by. As that low pressure is nearer to the coast, it draws in more warm air, hence the rain here. And now that we're on the backside of it, we're getting some drier air getting pulled in to our area. And the rain and the moisture shield's been kind of shunted or pushed farther to the north. So that's what's going on. As far as measured rainfall since midnight. 0.72 inches in Norfolk, 0.74 in Hampton. Just to tell you, if we had a 10-to-1 mixing or snow to rain ratio, and this was all snow that fell, you'd be looking at over 7 inches of snow for Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Obviously, it fell as rain as we got that warmer air into the mix, so it didn't work out. We only had an inch around the airport, and that was 0.6 before midnight, 0.4 after midnight. So you can see again the measured amounts of snow on the ground before the melt was around an inch or a half an inch to an inch across the south side. That's going to move out. We have one more shot at a little bit of mix or rain later this evening, and then things improve in a big way. But it turns colder. Look at your 7-day forecast here. Temperatures topping out lower to mid 30s through the work week. Might see a few snow showers on Thursday, but I think after we get rid of this stuff tonight, things look a lot better for most of the week.
All right, we started out this early morning with snow and slush as the concern on the roads. Now the concern has shifted to water, and standing water is definitely a possibility. We are seeing that in some areas across the region this afternoon. The peninsula improving. You still may see some snow up that direction and near Richmond. On the south side, though, it's pretty much all melted. We actually have a report of standing water on I-264 West in Portsmouth, enough so that they've had to close off a lane on the interstate. As we take a look, you can see all that ponding there, which was probably snow a few hours ago. No longer the case. So the concern or the things we're worried about now kind of shifting over from that freezing to that standing water and ponding this morning. This is I-264 in downtown Norfolk. Again, we're not seeing any snow on the shoulders, in the lane lines, in the turn lanes, anything like that. So no concerns with that, but do just keep in mind if you're headed out the door, wet roads are what you're going to encounter. Taking you up to I-64 in Williamsburg this morning. Again, earlier, this interstate was completely snow covered. That's not the case at this time. We are seeing a little bit of snow off on the grass there, but again, we're seeing that melting. So good news, but now that concern or what we're watching for is puddling and standing water.
Yeah, all right, we got to keep on watching this. Thank you so much for being with us throughout the day here as we keep track of what's going on with this winter storm. And again, the potential for refreezing overnight. We appreciate you. We're back at 6 and 11 with more local news.
Have a good rest of your afternoon.